Hello, I'm Colin Wright, and I'm going to answer some of your questions. First question today. Some say that knowing a new language is like gaining a new identity because it allows you to think and see the world in various different perspectives. As an avid traveler, I think you might know what I mean. I would love it if you could explain the intricacy of finding equilibrium between having multiple identities. This also applies to being different people in different settings. I totally agree. I think in some cases this is a literal thing where you can seem very different and come across very different and even feel very different by speaking different languages, or in some cases not speaking it, as is often the case for people who are arriving in a new place. Your vocabulary is very limited. Sometimes it's limited to non-verbal communication, and as a result you're incredibly limited in what ideas you can communicate and what types of conversations you can have and what types of relationships you can have even. I've known many people who have told me at some point some variation on the idea that they are much funnier in their own language. And I think that makes sense because then you can have wittier turns of phrase and you can communicate in a much more casually humorous way. Whereas if you're speaking a non-familiar language, or even like a second or third language that you speak well, it doesn't come as easily. You have to think about it a little bit more typically. For me, even though I don't speak any other languages fluently, the ones that I speak halfway decent, and even when I'm thinking in that language after I've been in that country for a while, I still have a far simpler vocabulary. I have a far more limited perspective in terms of what I can communicate and the types of things I can express. And a lot of what I can do comes down to just operational day-to-day things. I can go into a place and order food just fine. I can communicate what I need just fine. I'm not going to be discussing Nietzsche anytime soon. And so yeah, sometimes quite literally you do change, and you just have to come to accept that and accept these different parts of you and the different things that you can express, and then maybe try to come up with other ways to express these things about yourself to somebody with whom you don't share a language. But I think this is something that applies to a lot of people, maybe everybody, in different aspects of their life, whether they're traveling or not. I think most of us are probably at least slightly different people when around our parents or our other family members than we are with our significant others or with our group of friends. We might be different with people that we met as adults than we are with people that we've known since primary school. And so because we have all of these different facets, it can be hard to rectify this, to put all these pieces together into one cohesive person. My approach to this has been to do my best to make all of these different variations on the theme as close to the same as possible. And so if I find myself in some situation acting way differently or being perceived as way differently and trying to live up to that for whatever reason, then I try to align it more closely with who I know I actually am. A good example of this is like a sibling. If a sibling's known you your entire life potentially, and so if they know you to be a picky eater, and that might have been true 10 years ago, but isn't true of the modern iteration of you, then maybe you set it straight at some point and say, listen, yeah, I was a picky eater. I eat everything now. I totally love it. We should totally go get food at this one place. That allows you to better calibrate then these different versions of yourself in your own mind, but also in the minds of others, because people perceiving you differently than you perceive yourself can be a little bit disorienting. And so for me, it's important to try to set all those things straight, make sure that they are accurate reflections and representations of who I am now. And this does involve quite a bit more work, and it means that you have to be really conscious of who you are so that you know how to communicate these things about yourself accurately and clearly to a bunch of different types of people. But to me, it's really worth it, because then you never quite feel like you're playing a role for somebody, and you never quite feel like you are presenting yourself incorrectly. Even if you're only communicating non-verbally because you're in another country, you tend to do so in a way that conveys something about you really accurately. And the second question today: what's your best advice when it comes to working for yourself? Whatever the specifics might be, whether you're going freelance to provide services, or whether you're starting your own business, or whether you're like retiring essentially to take up your hobbies as a full-time gig, it's kind of important to understand what you're aiming for, like what you're actually trying to accomplish with all of this. Otherwise, it's very possible to create a situation similar to what you had before, in that you're leaving and limiting yourself in a lot of the same ways, not because you want to, but because you can't think of any other way to do it. And so what I mean by this is that if you're working as a designer for a big company and you decide to go freelance as a designer, in a lot of cases, people in that situation put a lot of the same restrictions on themselves, and a lot of the same downsides come with that. They work at certain times, they work from an office, they work with certain types of clients, they have certain types of relationships with these clients. And as a result, they end up with a lot of those same downsides and the same complaints about life and about their work that they had before. So you don't get the same benefits that you would if you extracted yourself completely from that situation. Much more ideal is to really take a look at the big picture and say, okay, this is the work that I'm doing. I know that I'm doing this, and there's all this advice out there on how to increase your productivity, to get more work done in a shorter amount of time, to make more money, to reduce your expenses. These are all good pieces of advice, but they don't take into consideration this core important thing. And that is, what do I actually want out of this situation? What will actually make me happy? What will fulfill me on a deeper level? It's important to pay the bills. It's important to make more money than you spend. But if you're actually at a point in your career where you are trying to customize this and do better than what you were just handed by default, by life and by the economic system that we exist within, then you might as well take advantage of this. You might as well do something that actually fulfills you on a multitude of levels rather than something that just helps you pay the bills. And so my advice would be to create this fantasy version of what it is that you're doing in your mind and figure out who you want to work with, who you want to work for, if anybody, who you want in your professional life, how much of your time you want to spend on completely other things, what type of work you want to be doing, and make all of this a foundational aspect of this business plan that you're building. And so everything that you do on top of this, all of the productivity tricks and all of the business ideas and all of the client ideas and all of the different ideas about how to get more done in a shorter amount of time and how to make more money and upsell and blah, 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 that stuff is important. Build that on top of this. The core foundational structure that you should be building on top of is something that will make sure that all of the stuff that you're doing from that point forward is stuff that actually makes you happier and actually fulfills you and helps you feel accomplished. And that way you're not spending 80% of your time and 80% of your money trying to make yourself feel okay because work sucks. That unfortunately is the situation that a lot of us find ourselves in for a great deal of our lives, and particularly our professional lives. And there's no reason to recreate it when you have the option of doing something other than that. So my best advice with this, if you're going to be working for yourself, structurally, make sure that the skeleton of all of your plans, the thing that underlines everything else, is something that will make you happy and fulfilled, something that will make you feel accomplished, something that you can be proud of. And then from there, feel free to layer on all the other stuff that you can, all the strategies, all the tricks, everything else. That's all legitimate stuff. But it's even more valuable if you build it atop this type of lattice work. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to ask a question for me to answer in a future video, you can do so in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, a like or a subscribe would be amazing. You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet at Colin is my name. My books and projects can be found at colin.io. My blog can be found at exilelifestyle.com. And my podcast, which I think you might enjoy if you enjoy these videos, can be found at letsknowthings.com.